So here's the plan: to take a cast iron bathtub, put it outside, and heat the water naturally using something called a rocket stove, where cold water is drawn in at the bottom and it's heated up in some copper coils and returned to the bathtub naturally through convection currents. So this is the goal, and it is going to be an outdoor tub. Let's see if I can get it to come together as a complete project. Once I had a plan in place, I had to gather my supplies, which was some copper tubing that was 1/2 inch and flexible, some PVC pipe, some wire, and some wood. From here, what I had to do was lay the whole thing out and get an idea of how I wanted to move on. The next step was to take my 1/2 inch flexible copper pipe and wrap it around the PVC tube so that it flowed nicely and didn't have any kinks in it. Next, I needed a hole cut in the PVC pipe so that I could slide another one in, and this is where I would feed the wood into the bottom of my rocket stove. I needed some wire grating at the bottom of my rocket stove to let the ash fall through so I could easily remove it and not have it build up and have nice airflow. So this is what my final plan looked like. I had the copper tubing, I had the PVC, and I have a little area at the bottom that would be cleared out so that I can scoop the ash out. What you don't see in this picture is my styrofoam with the little wires in it that would create the copper grating, but you'll see how that comes into play later. Next, what I did is I gathered my other supplies, which was some concrete, some vermiculite, and mixed the concrete up with the vermiculite and poured it into my mold. So this part was a little tricky in that I had holes cut into the bucket and I had to slide everything together as I poured the concrete in. But you can see here how it all kind of came together. But I needed actually 2 buckets. So I took another bucket, flipped it over and cut the bottom off and clamped the 2 together. So you can see them kind of clamped together with some basic clamps right there. When it was all done, I pulled the buckets off, which was a little tricky because I had to cut them off. But I got them off and then had to remove all the internal components. Just a little side note here, I didn't like the plain surface of my rocket stove, so I mixed up some mortar mix like you'd use for applying tiles to a floor and just kind of sculpted a face onto him, which since he had a face, he needed a name, and so we ended up calling him Tuggers. Okay, let me introduce you to Tuggers. I had PVC pipe inside and we pulled it out, and I don't know if you can see the copper pipe embedded into the side with the concrete. It's okay if it chips and comes away from expansion of the copper if that happens, because it'll just expose more copper. I don't think it's coming out at all. And at the bottom, maybe you can see my grate. There's my grate. The grate is right there, which allows for airflow to come up through the bottom. Now, I had a 2x4 in there that I was going to pull out and allow the airflow to occur, but, well, it got stuck. So I had to cut it off the 2x4 and then drill it out. And then we had a little tiny controlled burn to get the sawdust and the chips out. I don't have it all out yet, but we're getting there. And there's enough for airflow anyway, so it's all good. So this is Tuggers. There's copper pipe. Next on my to-do list was to create a connection system from the rocket stove to the bathtub. So with a little help from somebody at Menards, I pieced together a system that would work. Next, I needed to find a bathtub, so a Craigslist search led me to a bathtub that got removed from a house that was being torn down. Drove an hour to get it, threw it on my flatbed trailer, and brought it home. Had to try it out for size, and it was actually a really nice fit. The tub itself was in really great shape. The porcelain was beautiful, but the outside needed a little help, so it got some oil-based paint that matched the surroundings that my tub was going to go into. But there was a problem. The drain was old and needed to come out, so I had to buy a special tool to get the drain out. It worked, and I'm happy, and put a new drain in. And then the next step was to put the whole thing together and try it out. Okay, so this is the maiden voyage. I'm filling it up with water. Well water, which is pretty cold, so I'm guessing maybe 50 degrees, 55, 60 degrees. And so I have a thermometer, which it's not even measuring because the thermometer starts at 120. So we'll see. And so I have it hooked up. connections, which is dripping from the actual drain itself. So I got to fix that. Garden hoses to my stove, which we've nicknamed Tuggers. So get it lit, get it going, see how this works. It was a little scary starting the fire at first. Nothing exploded and nothing bad happened. However, it did get red hot, which was a little nerve-wracking at first. If you look close, you can see a fine crack developed in the front of my rocket stove. It never really got bigger, just the fire got a little warmer, the crack got a little bigger, and it did not ruin the structural integrity of my rocket stove. So I just kind of let that go. So if you look carefully, you can see water sputtering out. It is pretty darn hot water, so I wouldn't want to get my toes next to that. But it is actually working. Here comes the, oh, there goes a little bit. So, success, and we haven't blown up. And Tugger's crack has not gotten bigger. It's been about 40 minutes in, so I guess I need to just figure out how much time I need to set aside for this. I, of course, had to try it out at home before I took it up to my place in the woods. And I'm pretty sure my neighbors thought I was pretty bizarre sitting in a bathtub in the driveway with a little wood fire going. But it worked really nice. I have 20 acres of woods, and I have a nice secluded spot that I wanted to put my bathtub in. So I poured some concrete just to make it fun. I embedded some fern into the concrete, let it cure, and put everything together. This whole setup is in the woods, and I didn't want a whole bunch of pine needles and leaves falling in my bathtub, so I made a little plywood lid for it, which ironically now it makes the whole thing kind of look like a giant coffin. But this protects my bathtub from getting dirty while I'm not using it. This is the final setup of my tub. This is my little corner that I put it in. There's my tub, there's my burner, and this is going to be my view from the tub. I have to say, it looks pretty awesome from here.